here we are using the word biofuels or fossil fuels likewise. So that means in simple fashion to say those fuels which have been produced from the biomass. Okay, biomass means organic matter. So those fuels which have been produced by using biomass, so such kind of fuels would be known as the biofuels. Okay, so examples as you are saying, so there can be like bioethanol, so is an example, or biodiesel can be an example. Okay, so in the similar fashion, biogas can be an example of biofuels. Okay, so if we generally talk from the perspective of these biofuels, so biofuels can be generally of four types, or four, we can classify them into four generations. Okay, so if you see from the perspective of these biofuels, so usually we can make them, or we can categorize them into four generations. Okay, so the first generation biofuels. So what are first generation biofuels? So when we talk from the perspective of first generation biofuels, remember we are saying that these fuels have been produced by using biomass. Okay, so biomass means biomass can be anything that is produced from organic matter, that is produced from living organisms or living things. So living things also includes plants, living things also includes animals. So that means biomass can be derived either from the plants or animals. Is this clear? Now, so if we talk from the living things, living matter, so usually living matter is usually made up of various components. Okay, amongst that we have lipids. Okay, we have carbohydrates, we have fats, etc. So all of them are nothing but components present within the living matter. Okay, so here what we will be doing, like carbohydrates can also be known as sugars. Can you able to recollect that? So lipids, sugars, proteins, fats, so they are all nothing but biomolecules which makes up a living organism. So remember that. So this basic knowledge is important here. So here, when we talk from the perspective of the first generation biofuels, these biofuels are generally produced by using some using a biomass that is derived from the food sources. Okay, so this is generally produced from food source material. Food source material. That means we have various crops. Like think about sugarcane. Think about, let's say, other things like yes, yes, sorghum, yes, corn, sorghum, or sugarcane, sugar beet. So they're all nothing but some of the food sources from which the first generation biofuels can be produced. So food source material like, for example, corn or sorghum, or you mentioned sugar cane or sugar beet. So all of them are some of the sources from which we can produce the first generation biofuels. Okay, so here one common example for this would be like bioethanol, biodiesel, or biogas. So anything can be produced by using this one. So that is one thing. So if we talk from this first generation biofuels point of view, so just remember one thing, that we are producing this from food source material. Okay, so food source material. So one of the advantages that they are commonly available, and the techniques are also available easily, and we can produce it in a normal fashion without any problem. But if you look at the disadvantage of this, or one of the implication in this is that if we go on using the food sources, let's say corn, sorghum, sugarcane, or sugar beet, all of them for production of the fuels, so then what about the food security? Okay, so already the world is suffering with a population issue. So then if we just proceed with such kind of things, then there can be issues with respect to food security issues. So that's why this first generation biofuels has such kind of disadvantages. Okay, in long run it may bring food insecurity. So that is one thing. So then if you go through the next generation, that is second generation biofuels. So what are second generation biofuels? So here we are producing them from the food source materials. So there what we will do, just imagine a situation. Now we are using sugar cane for producing sugar. Okay, after using crushing of that, so then we will get the waste material from this sugar cane bagasse. Okay, so that's the waste material. So here what we will do means we will either use the waste material that is generated from the food sources, waste material that is left over after the food sources, or we will use non-food resources for production of the fuel. Okay, that means one example is like sugar cane bagasse. That means those material that remains after crushing of the sugar cane. So when you go for taking sugar cane juice, so they will crush it, so that then you will get sugar cane bagasse. So that sugar cane bagasse can be an example there. Okay, so like for the food source, waste from food sources. Then if we talk from non-food sources from which we can produce the fuel, so they think about wood. So wood is, we won't eat that. So such things like wood or such material would be used for production of the energy. So that's how the second generation biofuels would be produced. Okay, so in simple fashion to say, usually we will use things like other non-food resources would be like, we will use grass. So there are different types of grasses. So different types of grasses like switchgrass, Indian grass, or like we have other types of grasses like miscanthus. So there are such grasses, so which are generally used for production of this type of fuels. Okay, so they are all non-food resources. So food sources, if you are using, that becomes first generation biofuel. If you are using non-food resources or the waste material that is derived from the food sources, then it becomes the second generation biofuels. So that is one basic difference that you have to remember. So then if you see the next thing, so we will have third generation biofuels. So what are third generation biofuels? So here we are saying that biofuels means fuels produced from biomass. Okay, so biomass means any living matter. So living matter can be plants as well as microorganisms as well. Okay, so when we use algae for production of the biomass, for production of the biofuels, so those biofuels which are produced by using algae as the biomass, so such kind of biofuels will come under third generation biofuels. Okay, so that is one important thing. So here if we talk from the algae, so usually algae will consist of around 40% of lipid materials in their body composition. Okay, so these lipids would be generally converted into fuels. Okay, so under algae, the lipids which are present in the algae would be the resource we'll be using to convert as the fuels. Okay, so that is one thing. So these third generation biofuels can be anything like biodiesel, bioethanol, all those things can be produced. Okay, so one thing, if you see one difference from this to this is that it may have the issues of food insecurity on long run. So but here advantage is that we are not using food material, so it may address the problem of food insecurity which we had here. So that's why we just move towards second generation biofuels. So then we are also using non-plant sources like the algae. So that is another thing which we explored. Okay, so by using the third generation, what are the advantages means? So these kind of biofuels would be mostly they are eco-friendly or environmental friendly. So that is one another important advantage why we have moved there. That means you think here, so here we are cutting down the wood or cutting down the things means it is a kind of threat to the environment, because we may have to go for deforestation or we may have to cut the trees, that from that point of view. But here algae can be produced in a huge quantity, so there won't be any issue for that. So it becomes more and more eco-friendly and more and more environmental friendly. So that is one thing. So then it is also very easy to cultivate, because production of algae doesn't take much time as well as much space. So algae can be produced. So that is why it is more easy to produce and more easily fuel can be produced. So that is one thing. So then the next thing, if you see, there we will have fourth generation biofuel. So what are fourth generation biofuel? Now you see food source material, non-food source material, and we are producing it from algae. And next thing is that we can bring here the crops or living animals which have been produced by the process of genetic engineering. Okay, so those biomass which is produced from genetic engineering or through the biotechnology process. So here thing is that production of the biofuels from the genetically engineered material. So if you do that, then that becomes the fourth generation biofuels. Okay, so that is one thing. So here say they can be solid, they can be liquid, as well as there can be gaseous fuels. So solid things would be like, for example, we can use the wood or we can use the dried plant material, all such kind of things for production of solid fuels. And for liquid things, we can produce things like bioethanol, biodiesel, such things. For gas, biogas that can be produced. So these are nothing but some of the generations of biofuels that we can produce. Okay, so here simply, so remember that if genetically engineered material is used for production of the biofuels, that would be fourth generation. If algae is used for the production of biofuel, then that is third generation. If non-food sources or waste derived from the food sources used for production of biofuels, it would be second generation. And if we are using food sources like sugars, starches, etc., so then that would be known as the first generation biofuels. Okay, so that is also one thing that you have to remember. Okay, so if we talk from the first generation point of view, so usually apart from them, so what kind of things would be used means sugars would be used. So sugars means generally carbohydrates. Okay, like sugar cane, sugar beet or sorghum, so they all will come. So starch, so we can also use starch rich food material. Starch rich means think about things like maize and tapioca. So maize and tapioca, they'll be rich in starch. Okay, so they will be used. And apart from that, we can also use the oil sources, oil food sources like, for example, soybean oil, sunflower oil, or there are so many types like coconut oil, rapeseed oil, so oil material. So with this kind of material also we can produce the biofuels. Okay, so these are all the sources from where we can produce the biofuels. Okay, so that is one. So then if you see some of the examples and how they would be made, so simply bioethanol is one thing. Okay, very important thing what you have to know is that what is bioethanol and how is it being produced, by which process it is being produced, so what could be its advantage. So these things you have to focus. So first and foremost thing, if you see how bioethanol can be produced means, sources for production of bioethanol would be these things. Like we can use things like corn, sugarcane, etc. That means sugars and starches can be used for the production of bioethanol. So here what will happen, we will use corn and sugarcane, and we will subject the corn and sugarcane to fermentation process. Okay, when we subject sugarcane or starch, things like the corn, to fermentation process, then it leads to formation of an ester. Okay, so not ester, so it leads to formation of an acid. So this acid, that is acid or alcohol, so that acid or alcohol produced by the fermentation process, here it would be alcohol, so that is bioethanol. Okay, so bioethanol would be produced likewise. So then ethanol may be blended with gasoline. So gasoline is another type of fuel. So you might have heard about gasoline also. Gasoline is a mixture of, it is a mixture of hydrogen and carbon. Hydrogen and carbon. So generally it is a mixture of hydrogen and carbon. So gasoline, when it is blended with the ethanol, so ethanol plus gasoline forms another important compound called gas oil. Okay, so gas oil we will call it as. So things can be like this. So gas oil, which was seen recently in news, is a mixture of which of the following. So such kind of questions can be asked. Okay, so gas oil is a mixture of gasoline plus ethanol. Okay, so just read something more about gas oil and read about the composition of gasoline also. So that is another important thing that can be picked in the exam. Okay, so that is one thing. So then simply, if we talk from the perspective of its application, so bioethanol can be used as an important alternative source for the petrol. Now we have fossil fuels. Among fossil fuels, we have petrol, we have diesel. So bioethanol would be used as an important alternative for the petrol. Okay, so that is one thing. So here, if you see, one of the advantage when compared it with the petrol is a fossil fuel. So the bioethanol is a biofuel. So one important advantage is that it is more eco-friendly, it is more environmental friendly, and there here it produces very less or less amount of harmful gases. So from that point of view, so it would be environmentally friendly. Okay, so that is one. So from that point of view, remember ethanol, how it is being produced. In simple fashion, I am just mentioning, like when we try to convert sugar into either acids or alcohol, this process is nothing but fermentation. There microorganisms will help. Okay, like think about like conversion of milk likewise into curd, that is ferment. That's the process of fermentation. So when you try to prepare dosa, then you will use this butter. You will keep that butter. So after overnight, that becomes puffy. So there also the fermentation process would be present. So likewise, so that process is known as fermentation. Okay, so this is one. Okay, so then there is another process. When you try to mix acid, when you try to combine acid with alcohol, during this process, we will get another compound called ester. Ester is a compound that is produced when we combine acid with alcohol. Okay, this process is known as esterification. That means here we are producing ester. Ester is another compound like alcohol, acid, carbohydrate. Likewise, we will have ester. Okay, so this process is known as esterification. Okay, so if we try to convert one ester into another form of ester, okay, so one ester into other by changing their functional groups, so their chemical formula would be there. In that chemical formula, if we just replace one functional group with another group, then it becomes another ester. Okay, this process of conversion of one ester into other form of ester, so that process is known as transesterification. Transesterification. Okay, so here you try to remember that generally, if we talk from the perspective of the bioethanol would be produced by the process of fermentation. Okay, so fermentation of generally sugars or starches. Whereas if we talk from biodiesel point of view, when we subject or when we just convert the vegetable oils into esters, like let's say for example, usually biodiesel would be derived from vegetable oils. So examples for them like it would be soybean or palm oil or any vegetable oils. So usually they would be used in the process of production of biodiesel. Okay, here what process we will use means, here we will use the process of transesterification. That means we will convert these vegetable oils into ester. Okay, so then this ester, in this ester we will try to replace the functional group and thus new ester would be formed. So here the process that we will use for production of biodiesel is known as transesterification. Okay, so here usually sugars or starches would be used. Here vegetable oils would be used. Okay, vegetable oils would be used for production of the biodiesel and transesterification process would be used. Okay, so where we can use this biodiesel? Biodiesel can be used as an alternative to conventional fossil diesel, conventional diesel. Okay, so what is the advantage if we use the biodiesel? Means it is also eco-friendly. It does not leave any harmful gases into atmosphere. So that is another important advantage. Okay, now can you able to remember these two important aspects, from where it is produced, how it is produced, and what is the advantage. Okay, now remember with respect to gasol also. Gasol is a mixture of, like when we blend ethanol with gasoline, then we will get another compound that is known as gasol. So remember that thing. So transesterification and fermentation. So in the similar fashion, we can have biogas. It is another form of biofuel. Okay, so here how it would be made means in simple fashion. Look at this statement. It is generally produced by anaerobic decomposition of organic matter. Anaerobic decomposition of organic matter like sewage from animals or humans. That means, have you heard about gobar gas? How gobar gas is produced? From so from cow dung. We will use cow dung for production of gobar gas. So there it is an animal waste. Okay, so animal excreta we are using and we are producing. So gobar gas is a kind of biogas. In the similar fashion, what we will do here, so we will generally collect the animal or human wastes to produce the fuel. So that is nothing but biogas. So here very important thing, in bioethanol it was fermentation process. In biodiesel it was transesterification. Here it is anaerobic decomposition. Three differences you have to remember. So biogas can be produced by anaerobic decomposition. So anaerobic decomposition means what? Is it in the presence of oxygen or absence of oxygen? Good. So it is in the absence of oxygen. So we will produce these things in the absence of oxygen. So that's how that will come. So what is the composition of that? So that is another important thing. Okay, so decomposition of this material like excreta will generally produce methane gas. Okay, so methane gas would be one of the chief component of the biogas. Remember, what is the chief component in the biogas means? It would be methane. So what is the chief component of the cooking gas which we will use? Cooking gas? Butane. Okay, so butane would be the chief component, so which we will use normal cooking gas. So here in the similar fashion, methane gas would be used. So methane gas also will have the ability of burning. So that is one. So these are different types of biofuels. So remember these things and how they will be done. So that is with respect to the biofuels. Okay.